briefly introduce everybody here. And if you could just share your name and title and the organization you're with, and then after the presentation we'll have some time for some questions, and then at the end of the presentation and questions we will allow time for updates and announcements and everything from you all. So with that, I would like to start off with Megan Medlin.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Megan Medlin. I'm the CEO of Hire. Excited to see you all here. Welcome. And I will do the round robin check-ins. I guess, Ingrid, you're next on my list.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ingrid Gonzalez. I am a MSW intern at Hire from Dominguez Hills.
Anthony?
Hello, everybody. Anthony Garcia, just coming back from the the monthly PAC meeting. So I am fired up. It might also be my iced coffee right here. But
I was like, when are you not fired up, Anthony? That's what I want to know.
This is true. This is true. But I want to let you know we have amazing free classes open to everybody. Thank you.
Love it. Thanks, Anthony. Destiny?
Hi, I'm Destiny Estrada, and I'm an intern at Human Works Foundation.
Love it. Glad you're here. Speaking of interns, Alina?
Hi, my name is Alina Vela. I'm currently interning with Hire, my first Youth Subcommittee meeting, so it's very nice to meet everyone here.
Alina's on week 2, so we're throwing her in. Amy?
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Crowley. I'm the Collaborative Court Program Manager here at CASA of Orange County. Good to see everybody.
Glad you're here. Juliana?
Hi, I'm here with Human Works Foundation. I am the program coordinator for them. Thank you.
Love it. Welcome. Suleika?
Good afternoon. This is Zuleika Rodriguez with Children's Institute. I'm the employment specialist.
Love it. Glad you're here. Gloria?
Hi, my name is Gloria Noble. I'm a probation officer for Orange County Probation Department.
Gloria, I don't know. Ivy emailed earlier. Do you know if Ivy got the link? If you talked to Ivy or not?
No, I'm not in her division either. So I
was going to say, I don't know if you guys were connected over there. Okay.
I'm like the only reentry officer for probation.
We're having some snafus with our new website, the Eventbrite link up, but hoping we get the links out. So when are we not having snafus lately? Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Working Wardrobes. I'm a career navigator, and I'm going to drop in the chat because I'm just switching onto a contract for young adults. Eligibility is 16 to 24. So I'll put the referral form if anyone's interested. Thanks much.
Perfect. And at the end, Megan, we'll have time for shout outs. You can tell us a little bit more about that program as well. We'd love to hear it. And last but not least, Danny.
Hello, friends. My name is Daniel Gomez. I am an MSW intern here out of San Bernardino, and I'm interning here at Hire.
I guess technically last but not least, but I was saving Sam to introduce Jodi and John. So
yes,
yes, for all the guests, but I will let Sam introduce our guest speakers. We're super excited you guys are here.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here, and again, please sign in the chat if you haven't already. But yes, I would like to welcome Jodi Martin, Deputy Executive Director, and John Tuell, Executive Director with the National Resource Center for the Transformation of Youth Justice.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Oh, sorry. Just a little technical difficulties here while I work through this. Okay, I shared with Sam prior to everybody joining, but I can't see faces. So I think we'll go ahead and leave questions until the end. But if you do need to interrupt me for any reason, please just go ahead and speak up. Thank you, Sam, for the introduction and for inviting us to be a part of your meeting today. We're really excited to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Jodi Martin. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the National Resource Center for the Transformation of Youth Justice. I joined the NRC in 2021, so just over 4 years. I had spent 2 decades in working with youth and families in juvenile justice and child welfare in Washington State. I began my career as a court-appointed special advocate, so it's great to hear that there's a CASA on the call, and I was also a youth counselor in a community-based residential program. From there, I spent 15 years as a juvenile probation counselor in Yakima County and Clark County in Washington State, followed by 12 years in leadership roles as a program supervisor and manager. Our presentation today, as Sam mentioned, is growth-focused youth justice case management. We're going to be focusing on managing risk by facilitating growth. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to my colleague, John, to introduce himself and share more about the NRC.
Thank you, Jodi. Good afternoon, everybody. It's truly a privilege to be with you. I'm looking forward to speaking with you and also perhaps fielding questions so we can have a conversation at the end if those are raised. Well, as has been said multiple times, we are the National Resource Center for the Transformation of Youth Justice, and I am the Executive Director, privileged to be so. We were formerly known up until June of this year in our first 12 plus years, as the RFK National Resource Center for Juvenile Justice. We are a program of the RFK Community Alliance, and our goal, our activities, our objectives include providing consultation, technical assistance, and training to serve local, state, and national leaders, practitioners, youth serving agencies and personnel, and communities and youth and families. And I don't say that last to indicate they're the least important. They're at the top of the chain as we serve our interests here to improve the outcomes for youth and families who may become involved with the youth justice system. We intentionally partner with intensively with jurisdictions and communities across the country to enhance system performance and improve outcomes for youth involved in the youth justice system. And we reinforce that through our commitment to adolescent development science, best practice methods and approaches, and evidence-based programs and treatment services. I'll talk a little bit about that in the early part of our presentation. But we use frameworks, the frameworks that are depicted on this particular slide that we have authored to help guide those local jurisdictions or state jurisdictions toward positive change, increasing the likelihood that each and every youth and family may experience a future that we would want as if they were our own child. And in these depicted resource publications, which are available at no cost for all of our youth justice serving communities, we provide TA support specifically to advance best practices throughout every key decision point of the youth justice system, to improve outcomes for youth with involvement in both the child welfare and the juvenile justice system. And we refer to those as the dual status youth. That's depicted by the red publication. By reviewing and improving probation and court system practice and performance, and that's depicted by the third publication here that we've used. By enhancing diversion and deflection approaches that are consistent with community safety, youth accountability, reduction of future reoffending, and victims' rights. That's depicted by the second publication. We promote and support collaboration across the community as the primary vehicle for effective system reform. And of course, you'll be learning about the fourth publication here and our work addressing the growth-focused youth justice case management initiative. I should hasten to add, now that we've been made aware leading up to this, that several of you are working in the population among 18 to 24-year-olds. And increasingly, we're focusing on what we refer to as emerging adults as part of the overall youth justice system in our efforts. And before I leave this particular slide, we should give credit to the author, the founder, the creator of the growth-focused youth justice case management approach. That's Jonathan Cloud. He's been a colleague of mine for 3 decades. I had the privilege of working with him when I was overseeing the comprehensive strategy for serious chronic violent juvenile offenders from a national perch at the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention. He made himself known in a very positive way then, and as you'll learn today from Jodi's primary presentation, he really is focused on realizing the best in our youth moving forward and supporting that so they can have a future we would want. Next slide. I think it's important that as we provide this session today and answer any questions, fundamentally, we have made a commitment for as long as this research has been known to us, and it really emerged about 20 years ago, and that's the adolescent brain science. translating the science of adolescent development to sustainable best practice was a duty we thought we had in taking what that research said and applying it to everyday practice as all of us work with youth and families to secure those positive outcomes. This research has been used extensively in guiding Supreme Court decisions around life without parole, abolishment of the death penalty on the major scale in the Supreme Court, but also on a local scale in guiding how we develop positive youth development and support approaches, working with court service workers and probation and social workers and community providers to enhance the opportunities for these youth to succeed. This slide merely captures that what this research said is that during the period between approximately 6 and 24, young people have less capacity for self-regulation, particularly in their everyday environments that youth experience, which are often referred to as emotionally charged contexts. They have a heightened sensitivity to this kind of peer pressure and the immediate incentives that come with taking action so they can feel the immediate sensation of a positive outcome or support from their peers so they can feel a part of that group. And that often leads to what the science really speaks to is very risky behavior during this period, which of course translates to less ability than the adults to make judgments and decisions that really consider future orientation and allow the best possible decision making. The real win out of this science that we speak to in this publication is that it also indicates that young people are malleable during this time. They are the most malleable they will be during this period of development in their prefrontal cortex, and that maximizes our opportunity to help change any pattern of behavior, and as the research suggests, through a balance of sanctions and incentives to bring about the desired change. You can find this publication on the link or by the QR code below. I think unabashedly, I would say I recommend this for all of us who are working with the youth. It is a compilation of a lot of people's expertise around this topic, and I think it's beneficial for all of us that work with youth and families in the field. 5 primary principles driving our work, again, is committed to the research. We are unapologetically nonpartisan and apolitical. We believe that there should be no partisan issues that affect our ability to use the research, the science, and the evidence to bring about best practices for young people. And these are 5 primary principles we use to drive our work. Validated risk and needs assessments to guide supervision, service, and resource allocation decisions. Evidence-based and promising programs and services that are proven to reduce recidivism and improve the behavioral pattern for youth to achieve these outcomes. Clearly, we are a network, a web of service providers, of court professionals, of attorneys, of schools, of behavioral health. A web requires a cross-system and collaborative approach to address the youth's needs. And very importantly, we want to examine the data on race and ethnicity and the disproportionality of youth of color in our youth justice system, because we find that at several key decision points in the youth justice system, if we look at that data as a collaborative, we can agree to make certain policy, practice, and procedural changes that can interfere with the racial and ethnic disparities that are impacting these youth and maybe reduce the disproportionality of those youth of color in our youth justice system. And perhaps one of the most glitzy and glamorous pieces of our work that we're committed to, that we argue makes everybody wake up in the morning and get on board with us, is that we're strongly committed to the implementation science and change management science that really, in its simplest form, speaks to the collaboration, building an infrastructure to address the necessary change so that it can be sustainable, measurable, and replicable. And those are the 5 principles driving our work. Let me get out of the way at this point and turn it back over to Jodi so she can get into the details about the growth-focused youth justice case management.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I just want to highlight a couple other publications or resources that we have available on our website. We have a podcast, and it's called Youth Justice Transformation in Action. It's available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but we have a specific episode that highlights GFCM, and it's where John is introducing and interviewing Jonathan Cloud. So if you want to learn more about growth-focused case management today, there is the guidebook, and there is that episode, but also a webinar that we provide a link for on our website that will provide you with additional information. And I'll share that I had the opportunity to be with Jonathan Cloud over the past 2 months. We were in North Dakota last week providing this training to their juvenile court officers throughout the state. And the month before that, we were in Texas, in a county in Texas, providing this training. It was a day-and-a-half training, and it can be up to 3 years. Jonathan has worked with Hennepin County, Minnesota, so that would be Minneapolis, on fully implementing. They are our demonstration, our national demonstration site. So what I've attempted to do today is condense several days of information into a 40-minute presentation. And so we're hoping to get through all of the slides today, but I may just touch on some areas briefly, and we would encourage questions at the end or follow up even after today's meeting. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to John or myself. What we'll cover today is GFCM and how it's designed to enhance the risk needs responsivity approach. I'll touch on the unintended negative effects of the formal processing experience. We'll talk about how growth naturally involves desisting from offending and how we can bring a desistance perspective to our work in youth justice. And then I'll share some practices to foster positive identity formation and desistance. And we'll end with growth-focused case plans that support our work of going beyond compliance monitoring. So a brief description before we get started about what is GFCM. It's a flexible framework for working with youth involved in the justice system that emphasizes research-informed practices designed to foster positive identity formation, thereby supporting the youth's inherent capacity for growth and desistance from offending. There's a lot of research that's presented today. Jonathan did an exceptional job of finding research and science over the past 30 years that support this approach. So if you're interested in any of the research articles, they're cited throughout. But I want to draw your attention right now to the word desistance. And by focusing on desistance within youth justice, we mean supporting a young person's journey toward positive identity change and long-term personal growth, not just tracking whether they reoffend. We do a really good job in the youth justice system at looking at recidivism. Did they or didn't they offend? So while recidivism measures failure, desistance emphasizes the process of change. So building strengths, forming pro-social relationships, and developing a sense of purpose. By prioritizing desistance, the youth justice system can move beyond punishment to truly support rehabilitation, resilience, and reintegration into the community. Some of the core tenets of GFCM, we focus on enhancing, not replacing, risk needs responsivity approach. We know in California that there are risk needs assessments being used throughout the state. These are validated tools that have been tested within the environments that they're used. And across the country, there's these risk needs responsivity approaches and assessments used. GFCM fully supports them, and we seek to enhance that approach. Second, practices are integrated into existing work, not undertaken as something else to do. We know that we're asked to do a lot in the youth justice system. We know that there's always new information coming out, and sometimes we think about initiative fatigue. There's a lot going on. This isn't something new or something else to do. It can be fully integrated into your existing work, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. It focuses on positive identity formation that recognizes its empirically established association with behavior and well-being. So research shows that the clearer a young person can see their future self, their ideal identity, that future ideal self, the less likely they are to engage in delinquent behavior. One study, and I love the title of this study, but vividness of future self predicts delinquency. It provides empirical evidence that when youth develop a strong, meaningful vision of who they want to become, it significantly reduces their likelihood of offending. This tells us something critical. Youth justice should not just be about stopping negative behavior. It should be about supporting young people in discovering and becoming their future positive selves. Helping them grow into thriving, contributing members of their communities is not only aspirational, it's supported by evidence. Identity formation, which we'll talk about more, is the central developmental task of adolescence when you think about Erik Erikson's developmental milestones. And we must be in the business of building futures, not just managing risk. The last three core tenets of GFC. Yes?
I'm in, Nicole.
Pardon me? Okay. The last three tenets of GFCM, it's a strengths-based perspective rooted in developmental science. It's intentional growth experiences integrated into formal processing work. And it's about shifting the primary focus from the past, who the youth has been, about focusing only on that offense, to the future and who they hope to become. Okay, so let's dive in. Growth-focused case management is designed to enhance youth justice. So let's look a little bit at the youth justice system. And these are the 4 key objectives of the youth justice system. Accountability. So accountability to who? To formal authority, right? To the judge, to the court, to the police, to the attorneys, to the probation officer, and importantly, to the victims. Compliance, right? It's about compliance, complying with rules, complying with court-ordered conditions. I'll just say, as a probation officer for 15 years, I wish growth-focused case management was around then. I wish that we had this future ideal self as what drove our work, instead of a list of court-ordered conditions in the case plan that served as a checklist, right? It was about formal compliance. It was about short-term compliance, usually just during that supervision period. We didn't think beyond the 6, 9, or 12 months that we were working with a youth. And then change. It focuses on behavior change, and that's called act desistance, so not reoffending. And community safety. Community safety meaning social order, following the law, being on probation, and recidivism as the key indicator. Now, if we look at that with a GFCM approach, or with guiding principles of growth-focused case management, how does it bring a deeper level to these objectives? So we still have those same 4 objectives. We're just adding to them in terms of the accountability is to oneself. It's to their ideal future self, their potentials, and their strengths. So transitioning to adulthood. For compliance, it's about substantial compliance, thinking about long-term. Offending is not a path to their desired future self. It's not congruent with who they want to become. And then change. It's about that true identity change, identity desistance. It's incompatible with their self-view, with their commitments, their goals, and their roles. And then finally, community safety, that we're looking at increasing human capital and increasing social capital. Now let's shift gears to the risk needs responsivity approach. This is just a quick, brief overview about R&R, right? We know that the risk principle is about matching level of service to the youth's risk to reoffend. So a young person with a history of violent behavior may require that increased level of supervision. A youth who shoplifted may only need minimal guidance or diversion. The need principle, we want to assess criminogenic needs, and we want to target the most salient ones. So thinking about antisocial attitudes, values, beliefs, antisocial peers, antisocial personality patterns. And then responsivity principle. We want to make sure that we are tailoring those interventions, those programs and services to the youth's learning style, to their needs, to their motivations and strengths, and specifically within general and specific responsivity. So that may be the specific responsivity may be the youth age or their learning style, their culture or readiness to change. Now, if we look at that with integrating GFCM, what does that look like? So we're assessing risk level for reoffending. And while we're doing that, we're facilitating self-exploration. We're talking with the youth about their future ideal self and having them come up with that vivid mental image of what that might be. And as we think about identity, there are many identity domains. So we're not just thinking about a future career, but we could be thinking about their family in the future. We could be thinking about their health. We could be thinking about any identity domain that the youth identifies as what is a priority for them. That is where we could focus. For compliance, yes, we identify the criminogenic needs and the interventions, but at this time, we're also facilitating self-discovery. We're learning what those barriers are and the strengths for becoming their ideal self. And then within change, ensuring that responsivity to youth's characteristics. And here we want to look at facilitating self-efficacy. So the belief that one has that they are able to become that ideal self. And finally, community safety. Yep, youth's on probation, they're on supervision, the level's based on that risk level. And at this point, we're facilitating self-realization. We're helping them really reach towards those short-term goals and those long-term goals to become that ideal self. So a comprehensive approach to reducing recidivism involves integrating the strengths of both that R&R approach with desistance by using R&R to address risk and needs while also supporting individuals in building positive identities. The R&R approach is a valuable foundation, not enough on its own though. While addressing risk, it's essential. It should not dominate or define a young person's entire experience in the justice system. We know that those risk levels are important for decision making, right? We do a really good job of identifying those youth that should be diverted from the system. But we don't want risk level to be the lens in how we see youth. We don't want to see youth as low risk or high risk. And compliance with supervision, yes, it's necessary, but our goal should be more than formal surface level compliance. We want to support young people in moving towards substantial compliance. A shift, and we'll talk about this more later, from that external pressure, right? The court says I have to do it. I don't want to go to detention. That's why I'm following this rule or this condition, to internal motivation and ownership of their path forward. The justice system is not a holding place for bad kids. These are young people with strengths, potential, and value. And our role in the justice system is to uncover and develop that potential to build human capital, not just manage risk. So we know that there's unintended negative effects of the formal processing experience. And I'm going to touch on some of those. And this lays out the why for using a growth-focused approach when it comes to formal processing. So formal processing can increase the likelihood of youth offending persisting into adulthood. This study by Dr. Elizabeth Kaufman is called the Crossroads Study. And she followed over 1,900, I believe, 13 to 17-year-old boys for a period of 5 years. And this is what she found 5 years after initial processing decision. Youth were more likely to be arrested, more likely to be incarcerated, engage in more violence. They had a reduced ability to control aggression. They had lower school enrollment and they were less likely to graduate high school, and they had a greater affiliation with delinquent peers. Also important, they had diminished perceptions of future opportunities. And there's multiple studies. I'm not going to go through them all. You can look these up if you're interested, but that show that formal processing itself is a risk factor. And we also know through this study that formal processing can alter self-narratives in negative ways. That self-narrative is that story you tell yourself about who you've been, who you are, and who you hope to become. And it's really important as we talk about identity formation and helping youth to develop positive future identities, that we want to make sure that the work we're doing with youth helps them to see that they can become who they hope to become. There was a study, in addition to the one listed here, 2023 study by Wasserman, called Labeling Effects of Initial Juvenile Justice System Processing Decision on Youth Interpersonal Ties. And this study showed that youth internalize deviant identity, stigmatizing them as deviant, and influences the types of peer connections they form. And again, this is just that initial juvenile justice system processing decision point where this starts to happen. So now we need to move into how identity and desistance play a part in growth-focused case management. So growth naturally involves desisting from offending. We know that. We know that from the age crime curve. We can see that there's a spike at the age of 15 and then it starts to go down on its own. So growth naturally involves desisting. What is the linkage between identity and desistance? That's what we'll get into. So here on the right, you see the identity domains. We talked about a few of those, but there's many, many more. And research is showing that there's a shift. There's a shift towards reconceptualization of desistance from a static event to a developmental process. So we talked about that recidivism being a binary measure. Either they did or they didn't, to desistance being more of a process. It happens over time. And we know that criminologists are increasingly considering theories of cognitive transformation or identity change. I talked earlier about Erik Erikson. He provided us with 8 developmental tasks. He says when you hit 12 or 13 through about 24 to 25, your big task is developing an identity. So the developmental task that we are concerned about with our youth is called forming an identity. Identity is a sense of who one is, and it's important for many reasons. The most important of which, at least for our concerns, is that it motivates and provides direction for behavior. A person's actions are seen as expressions of self-identity. People intentionally behave in ways that are consistent with who they think they are. Erikson's theory helps us understand how trauma and adverse childhood experiences during early development can disrupt later stages like identity formation and adolescence. Supporting traumatized youth means helping them rebuild earlier foundational skills, like is shown here in these first few boxes. It helps to rebuild the foundational skill of trust, autonomy, initiative, and industry. And I'll show how that can happen through growth-focused youth justice case management while a youth is in the youth justice system. I want to talk a little bit about the effects of identity confusion, because it's really important that if youth have that confusion, it leads to these criminogenic needs and their barriers to forming the positive identity. So with identity confusion, we see poor school attachment, we see poor academic achievement, school dropout, a poor relationship with parents, poor relationship with peers, and delinquency. However, when there's identity formation, it increases community safety. The community is safer when kids know who and what they want to become, and we help them move towards that. And we make sure that our court-ordered conditions are connected to that. That's the key here. We really want to make sure that youth are seeing the connection between what they're being asked to do and who they want to become in the future. So the case plan is about the youth's path to positive identity, which is the hallmark of becoming an adult. Just touch briefly here about the identity formation cognitive behavioral tasks. There's 5, but we're just going to touch on these 2, exploring and committing. So identity is built around commitments, goals, and roles, and it's about exploring who I am and what I want to dedicate myself to, the life I want to lead and the role I aim to play in the world. But before commitment comes exploration, a process of self-exploration and self-discovery. In research, this is called exploration processes. In growth-focused case management, we identify them as distinct phases. First, it's about self-exploration or exploring. So in probation, a probation counselor early on, I'll get to this later, but in intake is going to start exploring with them who they might want to become in the future. And then self-discovery. So discovering what their strengths are, listening to the youth talk about their strengths and the family talk about the youth's strengths. These are necessary steps before a young person can meaningfully commit to a path forward. Committing involves planning and taking action, putting real steps in place and following through. That's when identity, it becomes more than just an idea, it becomes something you live. So without this foundation, probation risks becoming just a system of compliance, right? So this is about do this or you're going back to court. Do this or you're going to go to detention, instead of a meaningful step forward toward adulthood. The case plan shouldn't just be a checklist. It's a developmental roadmap. We're not here to just manage behavior or control bad kids. We're here again to help build human capital. And for many young people, that means offering extra support to explore, discover, plan, and act in ways that are positive, healthy, and forward-looking. GFCM offers a holistic approach that links external control with internal control. So on this slide, you'll see on the left the external locus of control, and on the right, the internal locus of control. So moving from external to internal helps youth in the justice system take ownership of their actions, build confidence, and believe in their ability to create change. It's about shifting from a mindset of things happen to me to I have the power to shape my future. So a sustained external locus of control, it actually weakens community safety. And here's several research articles that will touch on each of these areas. But when there's an external locus of control for a long period of time, we see youth that have lower self-esteem. They have attitudes that support offending. There's substance misuse. They have deficits in social competency and poor coping ability. If there's sustained external control, it also affects the well-being. So excessive concern about external agents of control. Youth are just going to wonder what's going to happen to them, if their probation officer is going to take them back to court, or if they're going to get a tangible reward. And there's nothing wrong with incentives. We fully support incentives, but that shouldn't be the only motivating factor. There should be internal motivations as well. There's also negative emotions. They're experiencing a lot of anxiety, depression, worry, and shame, and over attention towards self. Now, if we look at a sustained internal locus of control, that strengthens community safety. So within internal locus of control, research shows higher self-esteem, emotional well-being, mental well-being, adaptive coping, and more positive self-concept. So a sustained internal locus control, again, we see higher self-esteem, higher self-awareness, higher levels of ego development within growth and maturation, and lower levels of self-derogation. So that tendency to disparage oneself, more successful goal attainment. Okay, so now that we've talked about the identity and desistance and the importance of both, we're going to talk about the practices of how we can foster positive identity and formation and desistance. Here is the GFCM roadmap of youth's growth experiences during formal processing. So as a probation officer, thinking about the youth who's coming into the system and going through the system all the way through. So in that first part, you have that intake and initial assessment, right? So the youth is going to have a risk assessment, maybe several risk assessments done. We're going to talk to the youth about their offense story. But there's so much more that can happen here in this phase. This is about engaging and stabilizing the youth and helping them form positive views of themselves and have those conversations about who they hope to become. We then move into that full assessment. So this is where we're assessing and discovering, helping the youth discover who they hope to become, or I'm sorry, who they are now and how that is different from who they hope to become. So learning what they need to do is plan and deliver. And in plan and deliver, that's about looking at the case plan, and we'll show you a case plan in a few minutes, but this is about developing that long-term goal, which is the future ideal self, and building back from that. If their future ideal self is to be a mechanic, then what might the short-term goals be, and how do those align with what the risk assessment has shown? And then develop action steps that will help them get to the short-term goal. So in this phase, we're looking at planning and delivering, and then moving toward who I hope to become. This is that probationary period where the youth is on probation for the 12 months, and how can we support them with who they hope to become? Breaking it down a little differently, here's how GFCM practices integrate with the R&R approach. So again, on the left, you have the assess risk to reoffend, prioritize criminogenic needs, identify responsivity factors, and supervision based on risk level. So if we look at the facilitation practices within GFCM, we want to facilitate the youth's exploration of who they can become. This is about explore. Moving down, discover, facilitate youth's discovery of strengths and weaknesses. Then we're looking at facilitate youth's beliefs that they can do and be better, and this we call plan. And then facilitate youth's progress and growth toward ideal self, and this is do or act. So you can look through all of these, and it just walks through this this path that a youth is on as they go through the youth justice system, and how probation and the key stakeholders of the youth justice system can support the youth. This was used in Hennepin County, and I'll talk briefly about that. The probation staff, they fully integrated this, but that wasn't enough to do it within the probation system alone. They went out into the community. The law enforcement agencies asked Jonathan to come in and to train them on this approach. The community service providers wanted Jonathan to come in and train them on this approach. And the reason why is because if we're looking beyond the period of probation and we are setting that long-term goal, that future ideal self, that should guide all of the work that we're doing when working with that youth. And in Hennepin County, now on the court orders, it has a place at the top for future ideal self. On those service referrals from probation to the community-based providers, it shows at the top of the form what their future ideal self is. That drives the conversations, that drives the case plans. So now let's talk a little bit about the case plans. So developing growth-focused case plans that support our work of going beyond compliance monitoring. Research informing case plan approach. This is integrating the identity theory of desistance. So first, assessment, behavior, and risk to reoffend. Second, interacting with youth includes imagining the future ideal self. Third, experiencing the contrast between actual and hoped for self. Again, that's looking at who the youth is now and who they hope to become, and what is the gap and how far is that gap and what do we need to do to shrink that gap. And then 4, help them have the discontent with the actual self and desire for the future ideal self. And then last, a stronger intention to change and plan for path to ideal self. We talked about desistance and the importance of focusing on desistance and not just on recidivism. And I wanted to show these markers of desistance. So there's markers that are positive bonds, that are psychosocial maturity, moral agency and thriving, and positive identity. And this can work alongside of existing outcome evaluation systems, or it can be a separate system that agencies bring on board. In Hennepin County, they actually found one in the UK called the IOMI. And what they're doing is they're having their probation staff actually track markers of desistance. So that might be that they have formed a positive role model or created a partnership or a relationship with a positive role model in the community, or they have engaged in pro-social positive activities. These are all markers of desistance that shows that a youth is on the right trajectory towards desisting from offending. Here's a basic case plan structure. We all know what case plans look like, and along with these, we want to make sure that your short-term goals and your long-term goals are smart, they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, realistic, and time-specific or time-bound. Here's an example that came out of Milwaukee County. They're another jurisdiction who introduced or implemented growth-focused youth justice case management. So for this young person, their long-term goal was to have their own restaurant. That was the future ideal self. And then if we look back, how do we set some short-term goals using the risk needs responsivity approach? But we want to learn how to generate appropriate solutions to problems, learn how his acts affect others, obtain a job at a restaurant, and then action steps. These are small, easy to achieve. So list possible solutions to a current problem and share with, they called them health service workers instead of probation counselors. Participate in DBT's skill work group. While at Bakari, that was another community-based organization there. But you can see these action steps are easy to achieve so that the youth has some early wins and they can reach towards those short-term goals, which then they see that future self more vividly. It's really important, this long-term growth goal, the goals aiming at personal growth. So future self, what they want to do or achieve or who they want to be. It serves as the youth incentive to change behavior. Instead of that external incentive, it's that internal incentive, that internal motivation, which is the focus of case plans, short-term goals, and addressing the criminogenic needs. And it extends case planning timeframe beyond probation period. It encompasses youth's way of becoming a positive adult. So instead of thinking about the probation case plan as being 9 months or 12 months, there's this goal that will carry them through beyond probation. And research has shown that these kinds of goals predict growth 3 years later. A final thought, imagining a non-offender future self and growing toward it is a key to desisting from offending. Movement toward the institutions that support and maintain desistance, so legitimate employment or association with conventional others, for example, is unlikely to take place until the possible self as non-offender is contemplated and at least initially acted upon. This change in identity brings with it a change in one's preferences and one's orientation toward the future, such that causal factors or risk factors have a different impact on the person now than in the past. Okay. That is the end of the presentation. I think about in all of the presentations that we have given to jurisdictions across the country, one thing that I see is oftentimes challenging for youth justice workers is when a young person, they identify that future ideal self as something that appears unrealistic to us as adults. If they say they want to be a football player, an NFL player, if they say they want to be a musician, a professional musician, if they want to be an actor, that's okay. That's what we want. That's what we want people to know. That's okay, because you can still tie the short-term goals to that long-term goal. And if the court is ordering that they remain substance-free, if the court is requiring them to go to some type of a class like aggression replacement training, those will help them get to that future ideal self, that long-term goal. Now, we know that goals change. We know that long-term goals change. I think about when I was in college and my major changed 3 or 4 times, right? That's going to happen. And that happens with young people. We know that 12 and 13-year-olds don't necessarily know what career they want in the future, but they can start to think about it. And as youth justice workers, we can help that become more vivid for youth. If they're articulating a specific goal for the future, maybe it's walking them on a college campus and helping that become vivid for them. Or maybe they want to own their home, driving them through a neighborhood and saying, what kind of home do you hope to have in the future? That's one thing that we can do out of many, but is really to help that future self become more vivid.
If I can say, Jodi, great job of trying to capture all that information in such a condensed period of time. And yet, really, as I listened to it again, and as I listened to it when Jonathan first was presenting on this in Milwaukee, probably 7 or 8, I may lose track of time, years ago, it just seems so logical. And yet it is so foundationally supported by the research. And it is such an important role that is preserved, I think, for our community providers, for our pro-social support persons, for our probation staff, for our social work staff, for the folks that are on this call. I think that's what you want to do to help support that long-term desistance for these young people. So to me, it's so logical. And this also comes from someone who spent nearly 2 decades as a probation officer. And during those 2 decades, thinking the way this growth-focused youth justice case management suggests would have said to me, are you kidding me? That's not my job. I'm supposed to enforce the conditions. That's the way we get this young person to be held accountable. This is a different method of accountability, but it certainly proves with the research foundation that it reduces future reoffending, it reduces future risk. It supports the positive, sustainable behavior change. It supports the way in which that young person becomes a positive contribution to our communities. And I just think it is so logical. And now I can say that it's in the 7 or 8 years since Jonathan really put this out there, and we've had a partnership with Jonathan for several years, Milwaukee embraced it. Hennepin County, Minnesota embraced it. Washoe County in Reno, in Nevada, embraced it. And Jodi and Jonathan just trained in Texas and just trained in North Dakota. And just today we were We have responded to outreach from Cincinnati. A lot of people believe this makes sense, and it counts on people like us that are on this call to really give it life. But to me, again, it's so logical and so born out of a solid research foundation. It's very exciting that we might be moving in this direction.
Thanks, John. I'll turn it over to you, Sam, if there were some questions that we could answer before we end this presentation.
There are no questions in the chat, so just want to open it up to the group. If anyone has any questions before Jodi or John hop off, or feel free to put it in the chat and I can share it too.
All right, and those of you who are interns, if you think you don't know enough to ask the question, you better raise up. Of course.
And I saw the thumbs up, Anthony. Thank you. Appreciate feedback.
I know, Jodi, on the one, again, thank you so much for everything that you shared, and it was a lot of content to try to get through in the time frame. But the one slide you shared that was kind of like the roadmap of the, you know, did you, I don't know if I heard you correctly, did you say that process quite often is about a 12-month process? Did you give a time frame or something for that?
Not necessarily a time frame, just the process of the youth justice system from when youth enters through to reentry.
Okay, perfect.
And I did see there was a question about, will we share the slides? And absolutely, I can send those to you, Sam.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
I saw another hand come up too. I don't know where that is on our screen, but was that Anthony?
I don't know. I think in Zoom, if you raise your hand like this, it just shows a hand. So maybe someone put their hand up.
Oh, that was the question about the slides. Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam, and thank you everybody for coming and joining today. We hope you enjoyed the information, and definitely reach out if you have any follow-up questions.
We are definitely always available. We challenge you to go ahead and give us a call. This is the kind of stuff we love to talk about it. If you just have casual questions, don't hesitate. And thanks for everything you guys do. We really appreciate it, folks.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, we can now move on to announcements and updates. I just wanted to share really quick that our next youth subcommittee meeting will be January, oh gosh, when did I say it was? I think January 14th. And then our next employment subcommittee meeting is on November 5th. And then for those of you that aren't aware, our new official office space is open. So feel free to come by and visit us and get a tour. But anything else, Megan, you can think of? No? Okay. Any other announcements? I know, Anthony, you mentioned your mic wasn't working, and I think you're typing, so. Oh, when is the Youth Reentry Fair?
So no fair this year. We'll probably pick it up again next year, but yeah, no fair this year.
Any other announcements, updates? Oh.
I dropped it's a big old chunk of the chat, but happy to explain what I just dropped. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a hyperlink to a referral form, and that's really what you'd want to save. And it's for Working Wardrobe's new young adult program. So similar to how the rest of our services works, but eligibility is for 16 to 24. And the one thing to note is they do have to be out of school. And we can help them enroll in school or training or certifications, but that's one thing to note is they have to be out of school. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, updates, exciting things going on?
Sorry, Sam, I missed it. You said the next employment subcommittee meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat too.
I was gonna say if there's no announcements, then we'll cut out a bit early. But last youth meeting for the year. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sam will be getting out the 2026 schedule soon, so keep an eye out, and we'll see you next year.